Welcome to Nick's Images, and what we're going to do today is go over a technique called the dragon effect. Um, there's only one dragon effect, and everyone else has their own versions of it, and this is what I'm going to show you on mine. So this is a really good image that can be applicable for this type of effect. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my background, and I'm going to make a copy of it the way I always do, and I'm going to turn off my background layer because I can always go back to this and you know, start all over again, so to speak. Now everything that I do today in this demo is going to be layer based, and since I always work in 16-bit mode, there's a couple of things that I do ahead of time, and I'll show you that as we go along. Alright, so now I have my background layer. The next thing I want to actually do is I want to bring out detail, so I'm going to sharpen this this image. And the way I do sharpening, I do a number of different layers for sharpening. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create 3 more background layers here. Okay, just like this. And this first one right here, I'm going to call USM, Unsharp Mask. Okay. The second one I'm also going to call USM, but I'm going to qualify this as a low pass, and I'll show you that as we get along. And this is going to be a high pass filter. So what we want to do in this image is we want to bring out the character in this individual, and this particular type of technique is really good for this type of character. It brings it all out. Okay, so I'm going to turn off these 2 top layers right over here, my high pass and USM low, and I'm going to go to my unsharp mask layer. Going to go up to filter, sharpen, unsharp mask, and I'll probably go to about 250 and maybe 45. Alright, and this is basically what I see in my image. So already I get a little bit of sharpening in the detail in the beards and everything else. And you can play around with this if you want. That's okay. You can mess with the threshold if you want to smooth it out a little bit more. But this is typically what I want, and I'm going to say okay. Now the next unsharp mask layer is actually going to be slightly different. I'm still going to go to sharpen unsharp mask. But here, my amount is going to be fairly low, so it's going to be like 25, and my radius, I'm going to crank it all the way up to 250. Okay. Threshold is going to be 0. So as you can see, I'm going to preview. You notice what happens. The high passes come out, and it adds contrast to this particular image. So I'm going to say okay, and what I'm going to do is, now that I have this low pass filter here, I'm actually going to change my blending mode to multiply. Okay, and that gives it a seriously dramatic effect. And now I'm going to reduce the opacity of this layer to about 50. So now you could see what's happening here. We're not going to worry about the background. If we have some time, I'm going to show you what to do with that. My high pass filter now, I'm going to go over to other, high pass, and I'm going to crank it up, and right now it's set at 20. This is good for me. Of course, the amount that you set this would be determined on the resolution. This is a fairly high resolution image. And if you notice, I'm always working in 16-bit mode. So I'm going to say OK. And I'm going to change this color to vivid. Alright, so there we have vivid. Alright, so as we see, we have a lot of detail that's being brought out in this particular image. Okay. Now, the next thing I actually want to do is I'm going to change the overall tone of this image, I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to find some color. So I'm going to go to my color picker and kind of a deep brown, close to black type, and I'm going to just say OK, and I'm going to fill this layer in, and so as you notice it kind of goes opaque. So now I can actually use my blending modes to find the most appropriate. So if I go to color, let's say, oh, here we are. Alright, you can see that it turns this thing into more of a sepia tone type image, which is kind of nice. And I'm just going to reduce the opacity a little bit, and it adds this sepia with a color coming through, maybe down to 50%. Alright, the next step again adds a little bit more lines, a little bit more depth to this thing. Alright, and you notice I haven't done anything with curves or anything else. Okay, so I'm going to go grab my background copy right now. Alright, or I'm going to actually grab the whole thing. You can do this ahead of time, and I'm going to clone this entire image. So I'm actually just going to make a copy of it, alright, which is here, and I'm actually from this copy going to delete everything, so don't worry about this. Alright, and so now I'm going to change my image mode to 8 bits, alright, so that I can actually use my texture filter. I'm going to grab texturizer, and I'm going to go to sketch. I'm going to grab a graphic pen, alright, and I can reduce this a little bit here. Okay, so you know, I can adjust my my stroke length. I can adjust all kinds of stuff here in my graphic pen, but I'm going to increase my light dark balance, increase my my stroke length a little bit here, just like that, and I'm gonna say OK. Great, so now I have this guy, and all I'm going to do, believe it or not, I'm going to go back to my original. Here I am at my high pass. Alright, I'm just going to select all, copy, and I'm going to paste it in here. Alright, and I'm going to drop this to about 30%. Alright, and you can see what type of effect this has on it. Alright, good. Now I'm at my top end. I'm going to grab my filters, my layers, new adjustment layer. I'm going to grab levels. I'm going to bring in the darks a little bit. Alright, maybe just a little bit of the highlight, a little bit more dark. Okay, I don't mind. It looks good. Alright, good. And next, close this. Go to layers again, new adjustment layer, curves, and I'm going to crank this guy down a bit like this. Maybe bring my highlights kind of back. Alright, just like that. And if I wanted to, again, I'm going to look at my opacity layer here. This is going to control my this layer right here, my color layer, is actually going to control kind of my hue. But if I want to, I'm going to go again to my adjustment layer again, hue and saturation. I'm going to take my saturation layer down a bit, just like this. Alright, maybe play with my my hue a little bit. And there we have my version of the dragon tool. And the nice thing is, because we're using layers, we can make all kinds of adjustments. Okay, we can adjust the layers, the opacity. If I want to go from vivid light to some other type of effect, say, I can do that. Well, hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and you know, just play around with this. This was done very, very quickly, and the one that I did for the site looks a whole lot better. Take care. Bye.